Haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Starting with Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the bottom. The Gemara in regards to mezuzah discussed what happens when you have storehouses, let's say like a woodshed. Is it chayiv in mezuzah or not? So there are different braisos, and the opinion of Rav Kahana is that if it's stama, there's a machloikis amongst the Tanoim, amongst the braises, of whether that's chayiv in mezuzah or not. However, if women use it in order to adorn themselves, then everybody would agree that's chayiv in mezuzah. On that, Rav Yehuda argues and says no. He says certainly when it comes to stam, then storehouses do not require mezuzah. Only there's a machloikis Tanoim, whether when women adorn themselves, does it make it into like a residency to mechayev a mezuzah? One Tana in the Brisa says yes, the other Brisa says no. The Gemara now asks on Rav Yehuda, or Rav Yehuda, stama divrei hakol potur? Ask the Gemara, Rav Yehuda, are you saying stama, a regular shed or warehouse, a storage place, that everybody agrees is going to be potur? V'hatanya, behold, it says in the Brisa, Bish'arecho, in the pasuk that says in regards to mezuzah, uchsavtem mezuzos al beisecho uvish'arecho, it states in the brisa bish'arecho, in your gates, in plural, echad sharei batim ve'echad sharei chatzeros, both the gates of your houses or of your courtyards, ve'echad sharei medinois ve'echad sharei ayoros, or those gates that go into the provinces or the cities. The Brisa continues, "V'refes v'lulin u'mazbein." Also those that animals stay in, or that chickens, or are used for the straw. V'oitrus yain v'oitrus shemen. Those storehouses for wine or for oil. All of them chayavim b'mezuzah. The Mishnah continues, "Yochel, I might think shani marbe af." On top of Yud Aleph Amud Beis, Beishar, Achsadu, Merpeses, all of these things that lead in to, let's say, these places. In other words, they're like a corridor that go through in order to get to then the shar of these places. That may also require a mezuzah. Talmud Lomer bayis. On that, the price is said, the pasuk says bayis, house. Ma bayis miyucha ledira. Just as a bayis is unique for residency, Yatsu elu shem yuchadim ledira, to exclude the Beishar, the Achsadra, and the Repeses that are not miyucha tedira, which would not require mezuzah. The Brisa continues, Yochel, I might think sha'ani mar be'af beis hakisei, even including a bathroom, beis habursaki, or a tannery, beis hamerchatz, or beis hatvila, a place where a person bathes, or is toivon a mikvah. Talmud loymar bayis. On that, the Brisa says the word bayis in the Torah. Ma bayis hesui lekavoid, af kol hesui lekavoid. Just as a bayis is made for dignity, dignified behavior, and therefore requires a mezuzah, to exclude yotzu elu she'ein asuin lekavoid, to exclude these things that are not made for dignity, and therefore they exclude a mezuzah. Yachal, the Brisa continues and says, I might think shani mar be'af harabayis that it's required to have a mezuzah on the Temple Mount, or the temple rooms, or the temple courtyards. They also require mezuzah. No, Talmud Lomer bayis, ma bayis shehu chol af kol shehu chol. Just as bayis is something that is mundane, requiring a mezuzah, so too anything that is mundane, yatsu elu shehein kodesh, to exclude these that are kodesh. Al Kopanim, the Brisa stated in the beginning, all of these things for storehouses and for wooden shed, and all of these things that are going to be for storing wine or storing shemen are going to be chayiv and mezuzah. So you see clearly from this Brisa that it's stam, and still it has an opinion according to this Brisa that it's going to be chayiv and mezuzah. The Gemara concludes to Yufta, it's going to be therefore a refutation of Yehuda, who says that everybody agrees that when it comes to stam, storehouses, they do not require a mezuzah. So therefore, it's rather like Rav Kahana, who says that it's a machlokes tanoim. The Gemara now brings Tani Rabbi Shmuel bar Yehuda Kamei de Rava. He taught the following brisa before Rave, Shisha Sha'arim Peturi Mina Mezuzah. There are 6 different gates that are potter from requiring a mezuzah. As follows: Beis HaTeven, that which is used for straw; Beis HaBokar, used for the animals; Beis HaEitzim, to store wood; Beis HaOitzoros, regular storehouses; Ushar HaModi, those arched types of shi'arim that they used in Modi; Usha'ar she'enoi mikura, or a shar that does not have a lintel, a mashkoif above it; Uveshar she'eno gavoy asar, or a shar that does not have 10 tfachim high. Ask the Gemara, Omar lei, Pasacht b'shisha v'salkas b'shiva. You began saying you have a list of 6, and yet you listed 7. Omar lei, he said back to Rav, Shar Hamodi Tanoihi. I said that there are 6 that everybody agrees to, but I listed a 7th, the Shar, the arch of Modi, the arch type of Shar that's used in Modi. There, it's a machlokes. The Tanya, like it says in the following brisa, Kippah, that which is arched, Rabbi Meir mechayev b'mezuzah, v'chachamim poitrim. Rabbi Meir is mechayev in mezuzah when it's arched, whereas the chachamim are choylek, and they say it does not require a mezuzah. V'shavin, however, they both agree, she'im yesh beraglo asora, shechayeves b'mezuzah. If it has the ragla, the foot that goes up asara tfachim, and it has 4 tfachim wide, since the measurements, the requirements of a doorway to require a mezuzah is 10 tfachim high and 4 tfachim wide, so even if it arches after that, in other words, it gets more narrow than the 4 tfachim afterwards, then that's already considered to be the requirements, even according to the Rabbi, even according to the Chachamim. So therefore, there's no machlokes about that. Omar Abai explains further this distinction. The kuli alma givoya asara ve'ein begragla gimel v'lav klumi. Everybody agrees, even if it has a height of asar tfachim, but it's only wide up until 3 tfachim, and that gets narrow, then that's nothing, because up until 3 tfachim is considered lavud, it's part of the ground, it never had a full 4 tfachim. So therefore, everybody agrees that that's nothing, that's not going to be valid and requiring a mezuzah, even Rabbi Meir. The Gemara goes on to say, Inami, Abai explains, Yesh beragla gimel ve'ena gavoya asara v'lav klumi. Or alternatively, it does have a height of 3 tvachim, whereby it still has a width of 4, but it doesn't go up asar tvachim. Let's say it stops at 8 tvachim, and then it gets more narrow as it arches. That everybody agrees also is nothing. Even Rabbi Meir will say does not require a mezuzah. Lo nechleku, says Abai to explain what is the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. Lo nechlu ela begoiva asara v'yesh beragla gimel ve'ein berach v'dalet. When you have a height of 10 tfachim and it does indeed have a ragla of 3 tfachim, in other words, it does have a width of dalet tfachim even beyond 3 tfachim. However, it doesn't have a width of 4 tfachim in the entire 10 tfachim height. It stopped, let's say, at 8. On there's going to be a machlokes. Why? Even though it goes asar tfachim, doesn't have asar tfachim as a width. It has asar tfachim when it gets more narrow as a arch, but it only goes up, let's say, 8 tfachim. On there's a machlokes, as Rabbi explains. Rabbi Meir sover choykekin lahashlim of yesh boch lachoik lahashlim la'arbo. But you could carve out, if you wanted potentially to carve out into the arch, which is surrounded by, let's say, bricks, and you would be able to then have the 10 tfachim height. So Rabbi Meir says sover choykekin lahashlim. There's a machlokes, Rabbi Meir and Chachami over here. Rabbi Meir says, since you can technically carve out that area to then extend the asar tfachim, whereby you'll have the diameters to require a mezuzah, then it's valid. Even if you're not physically going to do it, but potentially you can, then it requires a mezuzah. Whereas the Chacham are cholkim, and they say, no, we don't say choykekim. Gemara now brings a brayso in regards to mezuzah. Ton rabbanon beis hakneses u beis haisha beis hashutfin. A shul or a house that is designated solely for a woman, or a beis hashutfin that are owned by partners. Chayeves b'mezuzah. All of these are obligated in a mezuzah. Frek the Gemara pshita. Of course, that's straightforward. Mao, the same. The Gemara says, what would you have thought? No, beisecha. Since the Torah says beisecha, it says bayis shelcha, which is in this masculine form. Veloy beisa, not her bayis. Excuse me, bayis shel isha. Beischa, it says in the singular form. Veloy batehem, and not in the plural form to exclude shutfim. That's why I might have thought kamash malon. It is chayiv all of these things in mezuzah. Fact the Gemara ve'em hachinami. Why not say indeed this is so? Because it says beisecha excludes beiso and excludes batehem. Answers the Gemara hanu boy chayi v'hani loy boy chay. I'm sorry. The Gemara brings the pasuk first. Amar kro leman yirbu yemechem ve'benechem. The reward, as it states right afterwards in regards to mezuzahs, so that you shall then increase your days and the days of your children. Hani boy chaye, v'hani loy boy chaye. These require life and these do not require life. Ella beisecha lamali. In which case, if it's going to tell you in the plural form, leman yirbu yemechem v'mei benechem, so therefore includes also all of these types of batim, including the woman's house, including the shutfis house, then beisecha lamali. Why does it say beisecha if it's not coming to exclude them? What is it coming to teach? Kidder Rava. Gemara explains like Rava said. Derech bi ascha. You can read the word beisecha as bi ascha in your entering. Why is that significant? V'chi okar inish karei di'emina okar bereisha. It teaches me, since a person, when he then begins walking, he begins walking with his right foot first, whereby the place to affix the mezuzah is on the right side of the doorpost. Tanya Ida, the Gemara brings another brayso. Beis hakneses ubeis hashutfin ubeis haisha mitamin b'negoim. Here, in regards to neget saras, the Torah tells us that Hashem will bring a neget saras on those who are chayiv for tzaras because, for example, they spoke lashon hara, slanderous remarks against a fellow Jew. That will show up on a person's house. Such a nega. So it says over here, if it's a beis hakneses, a beis hashutfin, or beis haisha, this brayso says they are all going to then be susceptible to negoim. Pshita asked the Gemara. That's straightforward. Why would you think otherwise? No, Mao, the same you might think to say. It says in the pasuk in regards to negoim, it says ubo asher loy habayis. That means the person who has himself the bias, he will then bring the coin to then look at the nega and determine whether it indeed is a tzaras or not. So here it says in the pasuk, asher loy, to teach me loy v'loy lo, to him his bias and not to hers. Loy v'loy lohen, to his bias and not to theirs, which would be shutfin. Kamash malan, indeed, even the woman's bias and the shutfim bias will be included in the negat tzaras. Ve'em hachanami, asked the Gemara the same question as it did earlier. Why don't we say that indeed that they are excluded? Because it says asher loy omar kro, because we have a pasuk bebeis eretz achuzaschem. Here it doesn't specify. It says a base, the bias itself, which includes even a base isha or base shutfin or base hakneses. Elo loy lamali. So then, why does it say in the pasuk uba asher loy habayis? What's loy? What's his coming to then teach us? Says the Gemara, misha miyached beisoy loy. One who then specifies he give his own house to himself. That means to say, as the Gemara will now explain, he takes those kelim and he then doesn't want to share with other people when people ask to borrow. And therefore he makes it for his own house. He hides it in his own house. She'eino roitze lahashil kelov. He doesn't want to share his kelim with somebody else who wants to borrow them. Voimer says she'ein loy. He doesn't have. He denies having kelim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mefarsamoy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he will publicize, he will reveal that this person does indeed have kelim. Since a person who has tsaras, or at least suspected tsaras, is first removing all of the kelim, so that when it's declared to be tsaras on the walls of the house by the kohen, then they do not become tamei. So when he has to remove all of the kelim from the house, so then it becomes revealed to all of the neighbors that indeed he did have those kelim all along. Prat lemashil kelev la'acherim, and this comes to exclude somebody who has kelim and lends them to other people. He will not then get the tsaras. Ubeis HaKnesses mi metame min negoim. Ask the Gemara, does Beis HaKnesses indeed metame min negoim? That becomes something that's susceptible to negoim. V'hatanya. Ask the Gemara from the following brisa. Yochel, I might think you bought the knesios. Ubate midrash metame negoim. I might think they do get negoim. Tamu loymar ubo asher loy habayis. It brings that post that we just said before. Misha miyuchad loy. That which is special to him. Yatzu elishem yuchadim loy. That means it's owned by somebody. And therefore, but the Knesset, which is owned by the Tzibur, there's not a specific owner or partners in ownership, therefore they're excluded. The Gemara says, Lo kasha. It's machlokes, ha Rabbi Meir, ha Rabbanon. One is Rabbi Meir and the other is authored by the Rabbanon. The Tanya, like it says in the Brisa in regards to mezuzah, and we learn just as mezuzah, so too when it comes to negoim. Beis HaKnesses sheyesh bo beis diro lechazan HaKnesses chay b'mezuzah. A Beis HaKnesses that has a place of dwelling for the shamish is chay b'mezuzah. V'she'ein bo beis diro, but if it doesn't have a place of dwelling, then a Beis HaKnesses will not be chayiv in mezuzah. Rabbi Meir mechayiv. Rabbi Meir says chayiv v'chachon poitrin. It's a machlokes whether it's chayiv or not. If it doesn't have a place of dwelling, Rabbi Meir says it's chayiv, and the chacham not. And hu adin, we then carry the same opinions to regards to neget tzaras, and therefore it's a machlokes. V'bois eimo. If you want, you can say alternatively, ha v'ha rabbanim v'lo kasha. They're both authored by the rabbanim. And it's not difficult. Why? Because hadi is ba beis dira, hadi leis ba beis dira. When it has a beis dira, in the rabbanim will say it's chayiv in mezuzah. But when the Beis HaKnesses does not have a beis dira, it's not chayiv mezuzah. So too, when it has a beis dira, it's going to be chayiv. It's going to be metame tzaras. And when it does not have a beis dira, it will not be metame tzaras. V'bois eima. Alternatively, you can say ha v'had les ba beis dira. Really, they don't have a beis dira. So why would it be chayiv metame tzaras? Top of Beis Amud Aleph. V'had krochim v'had kforim. If it's krochim, then the Beis HaKnesses is in a place where it's in an urban area where all types of people are coming, people who are visiting, people are traveling. It doesn't have any type of ownership that is recognizable. Then it's not metame tzaras. However, those Batei Knesset that are in the Kfarim, where it's then identifiable who are the owners, then it will, yes, be metame tzaras. Ask the Gemara, to krochim ein metame b'nagoyim. Are krochim not going to be metame the negoim v'hatanya? But it says in the Brisa, in the pasuk, achuzaschem, those lands that you will then inherit, achuzaschem mitame b'negoim, ve'Yerushalayim mitame b'negoim. Those that you inherit were mitame b'negoim. Not, however, says the Tanakama, Yerushalayim, which is not mitame b'negoim because it's not nechlak to any of the shvatim, according to Tanakama. Rabbi Yehudi argues, Ani lo shamati ela b'makam mikdash bivad. I only heard in regards to the Beis HaMikdash itself, that's not mitame negoim. Ha bate knesset, bate midrashos, mitame negoim. V'avagav did krochim ninu. But bate knesset, bate midrashos that are in Yerushalayim, since they were nechlak to Shevet Binyamin and Shevet Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, therefore they are going to then be susceptible to negoim. So you can't make the chilu between krochim and kfarim. And says the Gemara Eima say, Rabbi Yehuda ani lo shamati ela makom mekudash bilvad. I only heard makom mekudash referring to Batei Knesset, Batei Midrashos bilvad that are not mikabel, that are not metame negoyim.